Very few brands are as synonymous with commercial high-end coffee as Mahlkonig. But for a long time, that's all they were, commercial machines. Bringing one into the home would be more than overkill, both from a form factor standpoint and because you would be paying for commercial duty cycles that you would barely be scratching the surface of. But now, all that has changed with the introduction of a purpose-built home grinder. Can the X54 bring the pedigree of their commercial offerings into the home? Let's find out. For the sake of transparency, Mahlkonig did send me this grinder for review. But as always on this channel, that will have no impact on the contents of this video or the opinions I express about this product. If you want to check out the X54, I will leave it linked down in the description below. Starting off as I always do with the build quality and design, we are undeniably starting with one of the X54's greatest strengths. You saw my genuine reaction in the unboxing video, and just over a month later that opinion has not changed. This is a very well-built grinder that feels like it could cost multiple times the asking price. The whole body is made of metal, which contributes to the 8 kilogram total weight, and every interface, clip, spring, or adjustment just feels robust. For example, the hopper connection. It's simple, but feels sturdier than a more typical turn-to-lock system. The main interface dial has a nice tactile feel. The portafilter holder is solid metal. The grind setting knob is laser etched metal. I don't want to beat this point to death, but this really is a well put together product, and it was the very first thing that stood out to me about it. If I had to pick one negative, it might be that the magnets that hold the bottom tray in place are a little weak, but that would really be nitpicking. And thinking about it further, the fact that these magnets are there in the first place is a nice touch. In terms of the design, you could say that the X54 is classic Mahlkonig, a broad cylindrical body and a tall sweeping hopper. In this case, however, the tall sweeping hopper is a design choice that I started to question slightly for a home setting. In my review of the Sete 270, I noted how it was just tall enough to start blocking my overhead cabinets. The X54 is a full inch taller than that. It may not be an issue in your home, but you're going to want to grab a tape measure just in case. Quickly running through a few more specs before we jump into the user experience, this grinder uses 54mm flat burrs, hence the name. It has stepless grind adjustment ranging from French press coarse to espresso fine. The hopper has a capacity of 500 grams, and it has a 64-inch long, non-removable power cord. Alright, that's enough about the physical machine. Let's talk about what it's actually been like to use for the past month or so. The X54 comes with 2 dosing configurations, which are interchangeable using a button on the right side of the machine. Direct into a portafilter or using the included dosing cup. The dosing cup feels very nice, but I was surprised and very confused to discover that it wasn't 58mm, or any other standard basket size. It is too large to dose nicely into any portafilter, which seems like a pretty silly oversight, to be honest. The user interface is very straightforward. You get a manual mode, along with 4 programmable time-based modes that can be set by pressing the knob, rotating to the desired time, and then pressing and holding to save. Grinding is triggered by the portafilter when the forks are installed, or using the start-stop button when using the dosing cup. Regardless of which method you use, you can also pause to redistribute the grinds before continuing with the remaining time. The display can also be put to sleep or has a 5-minute timeout, at which point there is just a single pulsing red light. One of the advantages of this tall hopper is that there's always a good amount of back pressure on the beans as they enter the burrs, leading to consistent doses of around plus minus 0.2 grams, which is around the best I've seen from a time-based grinder. In terms of single dosing, which I'm sure is a question that will come up, the retention I was seeing was only around 0.2 grams, but it's very likely that there's some exchange going on there. It's certainly not designed to operate at absolute zero retention. This is a hopper-fed system, and when used in that way, the user experience is great. I got this demo unit right before Thanksgiving up here in Canada, and when I was serving 4 or 5 people at a time, it was an absolute blessing. Compared to the workflow I would have had if I were using the niche. Now, one final thing that I would like to note is that while the grind knob feels nice in the hand, the actual action of it wasn't the greatest in some cases. When moving all the way from the finest to the coarsest settings, some ranges provided more resistance than others. It didn't feel plasticky or like anything was going to break, but it just didn't feel as refined as the rest of the grinder. Not to mention that they could have gone with a large adjustment ring on the collar like they use on the majority of their other grinders, which is just such a more precise and enjoyable mechanism. Mahlkonig, if you're watching, please bring the large adjustment ring to the X54. This leads us to the actual grinding performance. The grinding range easily spans from French press coarse all the way to espresso fine and possibly even slightly finer. But getting into the absolute finest settings did result in some quite considerable clumping. I think this starts at a point that is much finer than you would ever be grinding for an 18-gram double shot, but it was still something I didn't expect from a grinder of this caliber. Apart from the clumping at the finest settings, the grinds throughout the whole range looked beautifully consistent, and the coffee they produced reflected that. Espresso shots were able to run very evenly with good texture and extractions reaching above 20%. However, in my experience, what really impressed me was the performance with pour-overs. I was getting very clean, balanced, and flavorful cups, and in a blind taste test, my girlfriend and I both preferred the X54 for that type of brewing when compared to the niche, the fellow ode, and the DF64 with its standard burrs. Grinding speed was very average. Not slow, but not particularly fast at just over 16 seconds to grind an 18-gram dose of espresso. Noise level, however, was quite impressive. Compared to the very quiet niche Zero, they were both coming in at around 65 decibels, but the sounds are distinctly different. I actually think that the higher pitched Mahlkonig might be slightly less intrusive to an ongoing conversation, but it's really too close to call. Now this next item is definitely a first for me. The X54 has a built-in Wi-Fi module. And before you go running to the comments, trust me, I was equally as skeptical. What could a grinder possibly need connection capabilities for, other than for something extremely gimmicky? Well, there's no app to download and you can't start it remotely from your phone to impress your friends, but what you do get is an actually quite nicely executed diagnostic tool. Simply turn on the Wi-Fi, connect using the password, and then enter the fixed IP address to access the web interface. Once inside, you get no-nonsense access to software updates, error logs, event logs, and an extremely in-depth breakdown of the number of total shots pulled, total grind time, those stats again but broken down for each individual program, total motor on time, total standby time, you name it. I believe it'll even give you a notification when the burrs have reached the quoted 25,000 shot lifespan and are in need of replacement. So who is this grinder for, and should you be considering it? Well, if you're the kind of person that switches out coffees every other drink, or only makes 1 or 2 coffees per day, then this might not be the grinder for you. The process of changing beans is a little bit tedious, and in such low volumes you won't really be benefiting from the advantages of a hopper-based system. However, if you're someone who uses a full bag of beans before moving on to the next, and often serve 3, 4, or more drinks per day, then I think you should be giving this option some serious consideration. The build quality has clearly trickled down from their long history in the commercial space, as has the great grind quality. Everything is well thought out, intuitive, and well executed, with that slight exception of the grind dial. But in case you haven't noticed, I am finding it difficult to find things to fault with the X54. If you're anything like myself and you've always longingly looked at those Mahlkonig grinders in your local cafe, then I can say without hesitation that the time has finally come where you can bring one home. If you want to check out this grinder, I will have it linked down in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave us a like, and even consider subscribing if you want to see some more like it in the future. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.